The way I became acquainted with this whole exotic idea of transhumanism, I was doing research actually. I was a writer and doing research for one of the largest U.S. newspapers out of Oklahoma. And this is maybe 20 some years ago. And doing research on the history of Halloween of all things, and somewhere I came across a term that I had never seen before called transgenics. Now, I didn't know what transgenics was, but I could kind of put two and two together. Trans, genes, that somehow we're talking here about genetic engineering, the altering of genes. And I became fascinated with this idea because back then the science was brand new. It was not, biotechnology, nanotechnology. These were not even terms that existed. But it was following on the heels of the mapping of the human genome, which then was giving both the birth to a promise and also to the sciences that we are going to be able to do things with genetics. We'll be able to heal our bodies, we'll be able to make ourselves stronger. There was a great deal of promise that was emerging quickly, and the science to back it up, at least in theory. And so I started doing research into transgenics, and at the time it wasn't very easy to get information. The internet was brand new. Certainly the science wasn't old enough for there to be much that had been published in peer-reviewed journals. And I wanted to know what is the good and what is the bad and what is transgenics. And I came to understand that transgenics was simply the crossing over of species barriers. This could be done at the level of just organisms. This could be done all the way up to the level of sentient beings, that you could literally blend one kind of a creature with another creature. Why would we want to do that? What would be the purpose behind it? That was what motivated me. And quickly I began to realize that both the military and also the pharmaceutical industry both had an interest in transgenics. The military because they thought they might be able to create exotic new forms of materials that could be used. For instance, one of the first successes was a project that was funded by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, in which they created transgenic goat spiders, actually spider goats. And the reason that they did this was because they knew that spider silk is amazingly resilient, lightweight, but very strong. And yet it's not very easy, to create a spider farm where you can milk spiders for their silk. But they knew that they could do this with goats. And so that one of the first successes in transgenics was creating a goat which was part spider. It could actually grow spider silk in its milk. And then they could use this for making lightweight bulletproof vests. They could use it for creating cargo nets. But since that time until now, as we may discover later on in this discussion, it has become far more sophisticated in terms of the military's interest and the amount of dollars that are flowing into research that grew out of those early forms of transgenic science. On the other side of transgenics, which is probably the biggest part of where the funding is coming from today, is in the pharmaceutical industry. Pharmaceuticals, why? Because the industry often has to labor with the FDA to try to get permission to do testing of new drug therapies on human subjects. It's very daunting, that task, to try to get a promising new remedy potentially for some kind of debilitating disease, and then to be able to take and start trying that medicine, which is unproven on human test subjects, is not easy to do. Well, the pharmaceutical industry saw right away that they would be able to take animals and put human DNA into the animals, create a human-animal chimera, and then they could work around this problem with getting permission from federal agencies to do human experimentation, and now they could test new drugs in human-animal chimeras to see how the human elements of that creature might respond in a way